Before I talk about the full CRI values of these two bicolor lights and how I add a couple things to make the user experience better, this is what happened. How's it going? I'm so glad you stopped by this video because this video is a special one, and I want to give you a little context behind this video because I think these days this is really important. So this is technically not a sponsor video. However, this is a collaboration between myself and a friend of mine, and Zhiyun happens to send these lights. So the story is that a cinematographer friend of mine reached out to me about a month ago. He shared his vision for his passion project. Now he's super professional and prepared, so he sent me this entire treatment and I was all by it, inspired by it. I really wanted to help him out. At the exact same time, I knew that Zhiyun was gonna be releasing these compact, powerful lights, and I thought to myself, this would be like a perfect collaboration. So Zhiyun would provide the lights, I would help my friend film it, and the result of that is gonna be my experience and Ivan's experience in using this light thoroughly, and I would actually share with you guys about it. I probably could have gotten sponsored, but I love the fact that I can talk about this freely with you guys, and that can only happen if I don't accept any money. So I ain't gonna be talking about pros of these lights, but also the cons, the limitation you should be aware of. Here we go. So the first pro is gonna be the obvious, the size and the power of these lights. I mean, this kind of answers the question, why should you get this light? I mean, look at this 500 watt light, guys. That is incredibly small. I have small hands, by the way. So the fact that I can pretty much palm this one-handed like someone's baby's head, this thing's tiny. So the weight of these lights are 300 watt is about 2.57 kilograms, which is a little under 6 pounds. And the 500 watt is 2.8 kilograms, which is a little above 6 pounds, meaning that you can no longer work out with the LED lights anymore. Yeah, this is a little too light, guys. Do you even lift, bro? But the impressive thing here is the fact that the 500 watt is just, it's the same size. So I just realized this, by the way, when I compared the shot, like top down shot. I thought the 500 watt was just like a little bit bigger, but they're the exact same size. The only difference really is that slight weight. And if you look at the top down view, I mean, look at the COB element size difference. I mean, 500 watt, it is massive. So I do have a conclusion to this video, and the conclusion is gonna state that, yeah, just get the 500 watt. And I have more reason for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this 300 watt as a key. Yeah, we're also gonna talk about how tough the lights are, but I'm gonna go ahead and mount this light on here now. There you go. So by the way, that's at 9%. Before this, I had the X100 mounted on there at 40% power. Now, if you look at the size of that softbox, that's the new Zhiyun's 36-inch parabolic softbox, and next to the X100, yeah, it does look ridiculous. But that just tells you how incredible X100 really is. It's just so tiny but powerful. But I mounted the B300 on here to talk a little bit more about the skin tone later and how fast this setup really was. Guys, there's no like control box. It literally is that one unit. The only thing that goes on here is the actual AC input that goes on the bottom of this, and this is a standard AC power plug. I mean, you find this on an old PC somewhere, really, so you always have a backup somewhere. So really the biggest advantage really is, no pun intended, is the size and the portability of this on a run and gun situation like the Ivan and I had to do. Yeah, we're trying to set up lights and move lights around in a very tight space with a limited amount of time. This thing was huge in a sense that it was tiny. Now, some of you guys who are experienced with lights are probably thinking like, okay, no control box, say, if I mount this light really high, which you guys seen, like we mounted that thing pretty high, how am I supposed to control this light really easily, physically that is? So Zhiyun did think of that question already. So they have this little remote control with a USB-C, very long cable by the way, that plugs in directly onto the light itself. So you plug this on here. That's the port you can also do firmware updates on if you don't want to use the firmware update on your app. Now you do have a little control box that you can control everything that you can control on here. So you got your dimmer, you got the color temperature, you got the mode and the menu. So to all the short kings out there who are concerned if I mount this light I can't reach the knob, Zhiyun's got you covered. Next, I want to talk about the quality. So let me just go ahead and move this around. Now we are going to come visit this again because there is one con about this one. So I got a hold of Sekonic C800 spectrometer, so I'm able to talk about the full spectrum of the CRI values. Just to get everybody on the same page, when you see a CRI value on the actual website of the manufacturer, they don't tell you the full story. In fact, it's not really the manufacturer's fault. It's just how the CRI is measured. So on the full range, we have R1 all the way through R15, but on the website of the manufacturer, they're going to show you the RA reading, which is R1 through R8, which means that the skin tone, and to me, skin tone is important. In fact, 90% of the things I film, yeah, there's a person in it. So I want to know the value of R9, R13, and R15, and especially R15 because that's where the Asian skin tones are. So if I film myself with the really bad R15 value, I'm gonna look like I have a fever, and this is the kind of Asian fever you don't want to have. So I'm gonna try to like summarize everything for you. I made this spreadsheet right here so I can tell you guys the summary rather than going through every single chart. So I tested the Zhiyun's B300, B500, and the closest thing I had is the GVM Pro line, the SD650B, which is also bicolor at 650 watts. So I can tell you B300 and B500, it is great on skin tone, especially at the colder temperature. But when it comes to warmer temperatures, such as 2700 Kelvin, it does kind of go into that good category, borderline good category. Now, it did outperform the GVM when it comes to 2700 Kelvin skin tones. Yeah, the R9 value, it's really hard for LED lights to imitate tungsten, so that's why I usually don't shoot in 2700 Kelvin. Like for example, right now I'm at 5000 Kelvin and the skin tone should be well in the mid 90s here. Another thing you can tell by this summary here is that how accurate is the actual temperature compared to the reading. For example, if I'm shooting at 2700 Kelvin, I dial at 2700, the actual reading is 2741 for the B300. B500, if I put it at 4600 Kelvin, it is reading at 4604. So it is right on the dot until you go really high. So at 6500 Kelvin, it doesn't quite read up to 6500. So you guys know it is advertised at 6500, but you're not gonna quite reach there. But in most common color temperature range, it is gonna read pretty accurate compared to GVM. GVM is all over the place. If you guys can see that. So if you look at the Zhiyun's official website, the CRI number, the RA value, is reading 95 for B300 and B500, whereas in B100 and B200, it's advertised as 96. So I was a little bit concerned, but I'm glad to report that that's kind of underestimating, so they want to over-deliver, I guess, because I was reading well into 96 and 97 territory for RA value, so I was really happy about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take away the chart for now. We are gonna revisit this for the con section, but I wanna talk about the actual physical quality of this light. And the main thing is for me is the Bowen's mount. So Bowen's mount here is metal. So that's important because rest of the body is plastic, good quality plastic. And I wanted to tell you that because you can't really tell from the picture. So this is solid metal, guys. Another important thing is sometimes when a manufacturer makes a Bowen's mount like this, it works with all their ecosystem, right? So Zhiyun should work with Zhiyun, obviously, when it comes to softbox. But sometimes you notice that with certain brands, you try to put a different brand Bowen's accessory, it doesn't quite fit. So I had to make sure this one right here, it does fit other accessories that are also Bowen's mount. So it is a true standard Bowen's specification, and one of the common thing that's gonna be on here is gonna be Aputure light dome. So I went over to my friend's house to make sure the light dome does fit, and it does. All right, I think I know what's in your mind right now because you're probably seeing like, oh my goodness, that is a lot of fan holes. How many fans are there? So there are 3 fans. There are 2 on each side of the light. Those are the big ones. And the smaller fan is on the back side here. So you also might be thinking, is that gonna be like super loud? So the way Zhiyun designed this, and you can tell by the size of the heatsink that's inside. So it is passive until it needs it. So right now, that B300 is at 9%. The fan's not even kicking on. It is passive, and this is Asian household, so I don't even have my air conditioner on yet, so it's kind of warm in here. But I still did my test. So realistically, indoors at 60% is probably the max I would use, like a 500 watt. So at 60% power, I was reading around lower 20s at weighted decibels. That was B500, by the way. So compare that with something similar like Aputure LS600X. I was reading in upper 20s when it comes to weighted decibel. Mind you, that was on the silent mode and just on the light. Now, I have to say, at 100% power, the B500, I don't think it's very usable indoors when it comes to interview setups. So I'm gonna talk about how bright this light really is, but if you're using it 100% indoors, yeah, I'd be more worried about going blind rather than like, oh, I can hear that fan. So why would you ever want 100% power out of B500? Is because shots like this. Yeah, so when Yvonne and I were filming that day, it was overcast, cloudy sometimes, sunny sometimes, but no matter what, we were able to shine that light straight through the window and imitate sunlight. So that is the real life scenario, but when it comes to actual numbers, Zhiyun's actually advertising this as 76,400 lux. This is with the reflector, and it's 1 meter at 5,500 Kelvin. Now the GVM 650B light, it's actually advertising as 77,300 lux at 1 meter. Same thing with the reflector. This one's 5,600 Kelvin, so close. Now this was the after the fact but I had to check on my chart. How does it perform on the actual spectrometer? So at 4,600 Kelvin, B500 is at 72,000 lux with the reflector. Now the reflector is always kind of tricky when it comes to lux measurement because each manufacturer has a different reflector. But using the same exact reflector, I put this on the 650 watt GVM light and I was getting 40,700 lux at 1 meter. So I should have measured this at 100%. So this is at 80%. So I thought that was kind of like the fair comparison because 80% of 650 watt light versus 100% at 500. That was my mindset, but I wish I did it at 100% just to see if the actual chart is true. But that is impressive still. But it was really nice to put the numbers to real life experience because when you put this 500 watt light on outside the window, you cannot believe the size of this light. So naturally, I was a little concerned about the heat generated by this light because it's so compact and I've never seen this kind of cooling design before. So how does it perform when it comes to 100% full power out in the humidity, in the nature? There's sun shining in us sometimes. It was actually raining sometimes. And I'm happy to tell you, it lasted throughout several hours with the rain. Now, I know you've seen the actual footage of the rain, but I don't want you to think that this is waterproof. It is not recommended that you put this through a rainstorm, but I'm here to tell you it did survive. So I'm glad the light is very durable, but now we're gonna talk about the interesting part of this video, and that is con, aka the limitation you should be aware of. So the first limitation is something simple, but really practically it's impractical. So the light comes in this little paper box, I should say large paper box. And you guys know when you go on a real shoot, you do not want to be carrying a paper box everywhere. It's gonna fall apart, especially when it gets wet in the rain. So it's cool, you know, it comes with padding. So there's some paddings inside. So I do appreciate that it comes padded when you first order it, but after a couple times, you're not gonna wanna carry that to a client shoot. So I had to find a case. But being a budget light, unless you have an extra Pelican case lying around, you don't wanna spend another $100, $200 on a Pelican case. So I found this. This is a $30, at least it's on sale right now for $30. $30 toolbox that's perfect size for this light. So I did pad it. Padding, I believe, was like $26-ish. I'll leave the exact same one in the description below so you guys can check it out if it's still sale. But look how perfectly this light fits inside this toolbox. Voila. And then you got the reflector, which fits perfectly. So I coiled the power cord and leave it in here. Look, I even got an extra room for X100 right in the corner. Now, only drawback might be if you're really picky like me, I might have to shave off a little bit here. So the light does hit the case just a little bit. So if you're worried about scratching your light, you might have to cut a little bit out of that plastic, but it closes so easily. There's nothing like bulging out. Another thing you gotta be careful, when you cut the padding out, there's gonna be all these like sponge debris. Make sure you vacuum that out. out because this light does get hot when you use it at 100%. So make sure the lights cool down. It's gonna be the same thing with the other padded box, right? So make sure the light is cooled down and then you put it in. Otherwise, you'll be melting some plastic things. One more thing about this case. Can you tell I'm like a huge fan of this? So this case or toolbox fits inside a Calyx. If you don't know Calyx, that's the best furniture ever built by IKEA. And this toolbox is stackable and you can carry it on this little dolly with the wheels on it. It's just scalable. It's awesome, guys. So that's just such an underrated process, carrying the light in and carrying the light out. Whenever you go on a shoot, it is so important to not spend so much time and energy trying to carry a light. So that was the first con and that was a solution around it to have a better experience. But let's go back to that chart, shall we? So some of you guys probably may have caught this already, but if you look at the R12 value on the CRI, it is a little bit low side. So the R12 value doesn't really eat away in terms of skin tone quality, but when it comes to the actual overall look, R12 value that's low means the light could be slightly shifting to the magenta side. And now this is very common among budget lights such as the GVM. I mean, if you look at the GVM one, I was reading 77.6 at 6500 Kelvin. So I'm glad that Zhiyun ones does score better on the R12 value. So it's not a huge deal when it comes to interview setup like this, but when it comes to product photography or videography, something to be aware of. And one more thing I want to talk to you guys on the chart is the variable brightness when it comes to color temperatures. So going from 2700 Kelvin to 4600 Kelvin, which is smack in the middle, that's usually the brightest point, the halfway point. That's why I use the 4600 Kelvin here. Yeah, we're talking more than 20% variance. And the GVM 650B Pro line falls under same flaw here, but definitely something you need to be aware of because it's a pretty significant difference. So when you change the color temperature, yeah, you need to re-expose the shot again. So that's it for the charts, but I do want to talk more about some practical limitation or the cons. So I have a love and hate relationship with this remote control with the wire. So you guys know already, I love this because it's so compact and easy to use. However, when it comes to sunlight, directly on this little LED screen, yeah, I can't see anything. So I like dim sum in the middle of the afternoon, but just not dim in the sun like this device. So there is a workaround, right? So there's the ZY Vega app. You can control any of the B-Series lights. In fact, you don't even have to go outside if the light is outside. You control from the inside. The only problem I have with the app is that when you use someone else's B-Series light and they have the same app, that's when I had some problem connecting to the other person's light. But with my own lights, I have no problems. But the biggest thing I don't like about this tiny little remote control is the fact that you have to hang this. And this kind of reminds me of back in the day when I had to hang the control box from the Aputure 120D and that was dangling. Yeah, this reminds me of the same thing. I hate dangling stuff. I have enough stuff dangling in my life. I don't need another one. So naturally, I had to come up with a solution. I used the industrial strength double-sided tape and mounted one of these cold shoe mount on the back. And I have the small rig magic arm. This magic arm actually comes with the cold shoe adapter. So this is a perfect match. And I love that it just stops there. So before you even tighten it, it stops there. So it's not gonna just fall off. And this to me is kind of vital. It's a small thing, yes. When you're on a shoot, you don't wanna be like accidentally knocking things around and things dangling, making noise when it's supposed to be like quiet on set. Yeah, I need this in my life. And you should too. And I'm gonna leave all the parts in the description below so you don't have to search for it. And last thing I wanna mention, because I know some of you guys are gonna ask in the comment section. So there's no DMX option on this light, nor is there any V-mount battery options on this light. But that's okay because this here is a budget run and gun, high power monster of a light for this price. So this is gonna retail around $720. And this is where I tell you, just get the 500 watt light. Don't even bother with the 300 watt. I mean, if you're really on a budget, it's only $180 difference between this and that. The biggest difference of this light compared to anything on the market is the size and the compactness. And because the size of the 300 watt light is the same as a 500 watt, I feel like it's worth $180 more. And if you're kind of concerned about the price, I do have a special 10% coupon code right in the description for my viewers. So check that out. But 500 watt is where you start to have a chance fighting the sunlight. In fact, this is where it gets kind of cool for photographers. So it does have an umbrella mount too. I forgot to show you that earlier. So right there is your umbrella mount. So this is an awesome photography light also. If you don't already have a 500 watt or brighter, this is a really, really good light to have in your toolbox. Literally. And I want to say special thanks to Ivan and his team. Like, what an incredible shoot experience that was, being able to use a powerful light like this and have fun. You should definitely check out Ivan's YouTube channel. I'm going to link it in the description below. The full film that we're actually doing, yeah, it should be on his channel now. I guess that's about it. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate you. Till next time, guys, stay lit.